We'll start our meeting. So welcome everyone to our meeting, 25th of July, 2024. Mr. CE, would you like to take us through the KARAKIA?
Morning, councillors. Whakataka taho ki te uru, whakataka taho ki te tonga, kia makina ki uta, kia mataratara ki tai, he aka ana ti atakura, he tio, he huka, he hohu, tihei, mauri ora.
Thank you very much. Welcome back, councillors. I hope you all had a bit of rest and relaxation over our 3-week recess. I know it was much needed, and I'm sure much welcomed by both the councillors and staff as well. So welcome back. All right, we've got a few items on our agenda today, including hearing submissions with regard to the representation arrangements proposal. So we will try and work through things as efficiently as we can. We do have those submissions scheduled. So if we get through some of the preliminary things first, we may rearrange the order of things, bring some other items earlier, just to ensure that we make efficient use of our time as we make our way through. All right, so we've got our health and safety statement. That's on page 5 of your agenda. We'll take that as read. Oh, there was no changes to that, right? No, okay. And in terms of apologies, we've got a full house. We do have all councillors in chambers, bar Councillor Graff, who is online with us. So no apologies. Confirmation of the agenda, as I said, we'll work through things most efficiently. So there may be a change in order just to ensure we fill our time effectively. And so we've got that motion on screen. Do I have a mover? Councillor Clarkson? A second, Councillor Nicol? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Right, disclosures of interest. Disclosures of interest. Any additional disclosures of interest or disclosures in relation to any of the items that are before council today? Nope. Okay, we'll now move on to confirmation of the council minutes for 27 June 2024. Also noting that we're proposing that we are confirming both the open and the public excluded minutes that have been included in councillors' agendas. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Marr, a second. Councillor Mahuta? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So we'll now move to minutes of the committees reporting to council for either confirmation or receipt, as noted in both the agenda pack, but also on the screen before you. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Nicol. I have a second, and Councillor Downard. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, since we have time ahead of the submissions, we will move on to our health and safety report. So we'll move on to that update, which is on page 220 of your agenda, and we have Marie Fullerton joining us.
Morena.
Thank you for coming early. I appreciate that.
That's all right. So first off, there's a little bit of activity in WorkSafe at the moment, with 3 new appointments to the board of WorkSafe, a new CE that was replacing the CE that was probably there about 9 months. And then we have the reform of the legislation going on as well. So just wanted to raise that. In terms of our incident reporting, I'm reasonably happy that there's no spikes in reporting. It seems to be moving through the line of the last 3 or 4 years, with the exception of 1 or 2 spikes from last year, which we not have any specific answers for explanation. In terms of sick leave, you'll note that for the last 4 months, we've had quite high level of sick leave with our staff, and I do expect that will continue into the next 2 to 3 months going forward, as we have the underlying COVID situation that's not seasonal, so we'll be seeing that summer and winter. And on top of that, we saw the early indications of influenza A in the community about 3 months ago. So we are experiencing quite a few viruses and sorts. You will note that we've have also included Roonga Māori, which is a traditional Māori medicine approach to our EAP services. We've been waiting for this for about a year, and it's now available to us, and it's part of our recruitment strategy as well. So we're looking forward to getting that up and running and reporting on that usage. So that's for all staff, and we're quite happy that we've been able to get that over the line. And just on the risks, we do have 3 risks that are currently under review. Are there any questions?
Just noting your comment about the level of illness, I'm certainly seeing that across other parts of the community as well. I know that we offer the vouchers for flu shots and things like
Yes.
that. Do you have any feel for how many are taken up? What sort of percentage of the staff take that service up?
Yes, we had a 49% uptake of that. Given that we are required as workplaces to run the program a month after the community-based program starts, so they want the vulnerable people and people that are entitled to free vaccines to get that early, and then we can run the workplace ones about a month later. So I thought that was a good uptake.
Great, thank you. I've got Councillor Marr and then Councillor Nicol. Councillor Marr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Marie, can you outline for me how the EAP system works? Basically, if I was coming to you with an issue, am I referred to health professionals or psychiatric professionals? I'm just not quite sure how it all comes together.
So EAP is a independent confidential service, and by belonging to EAP, it means that our staff who can self-refer, they can ask to be referred or a manager can refer, but generally it's self-referral, will get preference because we have identified a number of counsellors that will take workplace health and safety counselling services. So it does put us ahead of just the general community access to counselling services.
And with the work-related issues, do we look at a breakdown across directorates or anything like that, whether there's any trends through any particular directorate we're seeing more need for the service than any other?
Yes, we do receive information. Generally, you will find that 20% of the referrals are work-related and the 80% is non-work related. So we're really supporting people in their work-life balance and helping them to recover from grief. That's definitely one that we're seeing, and also anxiety. So personal anxieties. I think we're seeing a little bit more of that post-COVID.
And
Through you, Chair, just on that comment, we do promote it with staff, and we encourage it if they've got things going on in their lives to do that. If there's work-related matters, we encourage it as well. So it is a promotion within the organisation.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And those percentages, are they something that are pretty relevant across organisations like ourselves?
Yes.
With the 80-20?
We get the benchmarking from EAP, and that's across all industries, Australia and New Zealand.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Mm,
yes.
Interesting. Councillor Nicol.
Thank you. Thanks, Marie. There's a piece in this report which is every month, and it talks about the ELT walkarounds.
Yes.
And I was just wondering whether you could provide some context as to how they're
Yes.
going, rather than
Yes.
just the fact they're happening.
Right, I'll do that. Yes.
That'd be great.
That's part of the governance due
Yeah.
diligence. Yes.
Yeah, I
So
thought
I
we
can
just
do
might
that.
add something rather than just reading that they're
Alright.
happening each time.
We'll do that.
Yeah,
Great.
thanks. That's all.
Anything else? Any other questions? All right. Hey, thank you so much for that, Marie. Really appreciate what you've put into that, and just noting those comments for additional content going forward. Thank you. All right, we've got 15 minutes before our first submitter is scheduled, so I think I'll go forward to oh, sorry, resolution. Gosh, I'm out of practice. Thank you, Councillor Strange, and a second, and Councillor Smith. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, we'll move forward to item 7.7, which is the adoption of the Future Proof Strategy, FDS update. This is on page 227 of your agenda packs. And we've got Miffy, I think. Miffy Foley online. Sorry to jump ahead without giving you notice, Miffy. Hopefully you can join us.
Madam Chair, it's Tracy speaking. I'm online. Miffy and Lizette are just on their way down to Chambers now.
All right.
I'm happy to lead off until they get there.
If you're happy to continue on, Director May, that'd be great.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this report seeks Council's formal adoption of the Future Proof strategy, with the Future Proof development strategy that's been through quite the process. We've had our
We do have Miffy in the chamber now,
we
Tracy.
received a number of hearings. I will pass it over to Miffy.
Thanks, Tracy. Oh, just need to get a red light. There we go.
Okay. So, as you know, we are part of the Future Proof Partnership. It manages growth around for our high growth area of Hamilton City, Waipa, Waikato, and now Matamata Piako. And we have a Future Proof strategy that sets that all out. So it was substantially updated in 2022. However, we needed to make some updates to make it compliant with the National Policy Statement on Urban Development, and because Matamata Piako joined in late 22 after we had completed the strategy. So those updates have been made. They are fairly minor. Sorry, take a deep breath. But yeah, making
This
sure
is part of a fitness program that we're introducing.
So it was more about finessing and making sure we were ticking those boxes, particularly identifying the infrastructure that was needed to make sure we could go ahead with our growth areas, updating for the work that's been done. A lot of work's been done around the traffic space and water space, so including that all in. So we went out with a special consultative process, which included a hearing. Councillor Strange was on the panel, did a great job. And it's been adopted by the Future Proof Implementation Committee, endorsed by the committee, and they have recommended adoption by all the partner councils. So that's what we're asking for you today, to adopt the strategy. Any questions?
Great. You didn't want to raise that issue that came up online for you and I? Joel?
I did have a query
So
from,
this is Councillor Smith.
did have a question from a constituent, but that has been answered by
with.
staff, and I've responded to the constituent and referred the matter to Councillor Strange.
Great. Great.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions? Councillor Marr.
Thank you. Miffy, is there any conflict now with where the government's going with the RMA? And obviously the urban development.
Not a conflict, but we will need to do further work. We are working with MFE and MHUD. We had a session with them yesterday to talk about their recent announcements and how they might work. So we were thinking of starting our next housing and business capacity development capacity assessment shortly, but we will wait now until they've firmed up what that's going to look like. We understand there'll be consultation documents available early next year that we'll be able to provide formal comment on, with the legislation due to be in place mid next year. So we will keep tracking with that, keep talking to MFE and MHUD and make sure that we...
It's encouraging to hear that there is a pause in the work here. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Strange.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Miffy, for all your work in this space as well, and all the staff that are involved in Future Proof too. Linda in the room. The whole process that we've been through has been, no sooner than we've completed it. We're already working on the next one. So, the Future Proof area is a really, dynamic space within our region. Appreciate the expertise that the staff bring to that, alongside all the elected members around the table from the Future Proof area as well. So thank you, and I would be happy to move this, please.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Strange. Just want to echo what your comments there. I think that Future Proof is a real great example where we have a number of organizations that come together on a regular basis with a common good in mind, which is working beyond the boundaries, beyond the confines of individual organizations, and endeavoring to collectively lead to a greater good for the community. So really applaud the work that Future Proof does, and thank you for the support and the work that you put in supporting that collective. Thank you for that. Any other comments? If not, I did hear Councillor Mahuta. Were you happy to second that? All right, we have a mover and a seconder to adopt the Future Proof Strategy FDS update. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Thanks for the sprints downstairs. I appreciate it. I think you got some steps up. I hope you had your watch on. I hope they're all counted. Good. We like that. Okay. What we will do now, because I do see one of our submitters in the chambers, so we'll move now to the representation review or representation arrangements submissions. So we'll get Molly to just introduce the process before we go to the submitters, and then we've got an online submitter scheduled at 10 o'clock. So depending on how we move through, what's the timing for each submitter to speak?
Each submitter has been given 10 minutes, and then we've allowed 5 minutes for any questions.
Okay.
But also we've asked submitters to come earlier than the time allocated, just in case we're running ahead of time. But I don't see any of the online submitters online yet. But as you say, Madam Chair, we do have one of our submitters here.
Right. Okay. So we'll crack onto it. You give us the introduction, and then Mr. Submitter, if you're happy to come forward once I indicate, then we'll try and move through this. Over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the purpose of this item on your agenda is to enable the hearing of submissions that we have received on the Council's initial representation arrangements proposal. We'll dive a bit more deeply into the initial proposal, submission points, and analysis and recommendations in the next item. What we want to do first, though, is simply enable submitters to present their submissions. On April 24th, earlier this year, Council adopted the initial proposal. The initial proposal and submission process was publicly notified on Council's website, also in newspapers. There was some promotion on our social media platforms, and we also took the opportunity to release, to do a media release on the topic. The submission period was open from 6th of May to 7th of June, so just over a month. And during that submission period, we received 10 submissions from George Tukukino from Taupiri Marae, Gary Jager, Nera Getty, Greg Sheehan, Phyllis McCracken, Wati Ormsby, Russell Armitage, Priya Kurian from the University of Waikato, and then 2 additional submissions from local councils, Matamata Piako and Hamilton City. Copies of all of those submissions are within the agenda pack. 4 submitters have expressed a desire to be heard today. Firstly, George Tukukino from Taupiri Marae, whilst originally scheduled to come and talk to us this morning, has since indicated that he can no longer make it. Instead, he has circulated some further information about his viewpoints. Gira Nera is the first scheduled submitter. She will be presenting online, although she has not yet joined us, so we'll just keep a watching eye on that one. Mr. Russell Armitage is here with us today. And the University of Waikato, whilst originally indicated that they would be coming in, have now indicated that they will be joining us online. So I will hand back to you, Madam Chair.
All right, since, do we have the University of Waikato online yet? No. Okay, well, since we don't have the other, our first submitter online yet, we will go ahead and welcome Mr. Russell Armitage. Welcome.
Kia ora katoa and atamario katoa. I'm a bit of a Luddite, so I've got hard copies.
Great.
Oh,
All right, we'll just distribute your information just so councillors have that in front of them. Right, thank you for providing that, Mr. Armitage. Over to you.
well, although I'm the same age as Joe Biden, I haven't reached his stage quite yet. So I will read my submission. And I'm making this submission inspired by one of Plato's great sayings, which goes something like this. If you don't take part in your democracy, you run the risk of being ruled by your inferiors. Now, I'm not making cussing and aspersions on anybody here, but I'm making the point that we have a very healthy democracy in this country, but it will only remain so if ordinary citizens such as myself take part to the best of their ability and hold those elected to account and to ensure that they are acting in the best interest of their community. As Sir Keith Starmer said recently, being in politics is to serve. So why am I making a submission on this issue of electoral boundaries? Being an economist, I'm very interested in statistics, and that includes population data. On that dreadful beast, social media, there has been quite a lot of comment in past months about the behaviour and structure of the Waikato Regional Council, and particular a bias in the current allocation of seats on the council. I decided to investigate this, and what I discovered persuaded me to make a submission on the matter. To familiarise myself with the issue, I looked at some basic data for a number of councils as a basis of comparison. This is table 1. For me, it shows quite clearly that the Waikato Regional Council has too few seats for both its area and population, and that an increase in the number of councillors is warranted. We all know that this region is now the fastest growing in the country, and there is no doubt that this will continue for some time, and in my view, even increase. Therefore, the first thing that this electoral review must take into account with any changes it decides to make is to factor in a significant population increase. This further reinforces the need for an increase in the number of councillors. Then I did an analysis of the population and the number of seats in each ward. It confirmed the view that has been expressed a great deal for quite a while, that Hamilton is underrepresented with the current allocation of seats, and this has got worse as the population of Hamilton has grown at a faster rate than the rest of the region. You will note in the table 2 the degree of difference, and I don't like using decimal points, but the figures are such that one needs to be fair and do this, of 6.9% between the percentage of councillors Hamilton has, 28.6, and its population percentage in the region, 35.5. This difference is higher than in any other ward. You may wonder why all the wards have in fact a negative figure in terms of representation. This is due entirely to the 2 Maori seats, which caused this to happen. Out of interest, if you take these 2 seats out of the equation, all variances decrease, but Hamilton's by comparison is even worse off. But that factor needs to be ignored for this exercise. I used the 2023 Department of Statistics population figures for this analysis, as in my view, it is not professional or honest to use anything but the most recent population figures available for this exercise. It is quite untenable to base any decisions on electoral reform for the WRC using 2008 census figures. They are already well out of date and very unreliable, as expert opinion has already revealed, and you'll be aware of that. Furthermore, you will note how much the population numbers have changed over the past 5 years. However, to avoid any debate on my conclusions about representation unfairness, I undertook the same exercise using the 2018 figures, which the WRC has used up till now, and then one with an average of both 2018 and 2023. There was absolutely no significant difference to the situation I described earlier. The figures are shown in Table 2. Hamilton is very disadvantaged by the present seat numbers. To have a truly representative WRC, this must be rectified. I understand that until this hearing, the only proposal that this council came up with for electoral reform was to shift part of Waiho into Thames Coromandel to even up population numbers to within acceptable tolerance measures. This is just fiddling at the edges and does nothing to address the current imbalance and underrepresentation Hamilton suffers from. Therefore, to deal with the currency allocation, which I have read some call a gerrymander, I couldn't possibly comment, and taking into account that the WRC can justify an increase in numbers, I propose to be an additional councillor for the Hamilton ward. This will also have the benefit of making the council 15 in number, an uneven number, which is much more satisfactory when it comes to voting. With even numbers can give the chair too much power. By doing this, the figures at the bottom of the table show that the percentage disadvantage to Hamilton is reduced, and in fact results in disadvantage figures very similar for all wards, with the exception of Waikato. Although in that case, the population figures are at variance with other data and need to be audited. This is all the more reason to delay any final decision on boundary changes, which still might be needed, and add the increase in seat numbers until the final population figures are available. I have noticed over the past few years that there has been an increasing disconnect between local government and the communities they serve. This has been manifested throughout the country by more anger, disillusion, and frustration amongst ordinary people than I have ever experienced before in my full life here and as a fourth generation Kiwi. The frustration amongst ordinary people is high. The main complaints are that either councils are not listening to people or are doing things that are not wanted or asked for. I don't entirely blame elected politicians for this situation. which partly explains the lower voter turnout. The disconnect is often a result of some politicians not being up to the job required and lacking the skills and experience needed to make decisions, or even in some cases, being aware of what the staff are doing, such as the recent bus stop and parking fiascos in Auckland and Hamilton. This means that politicians can be captured by the bureaucracy and end up implementing staff agendas without knowing the full implications of what they are agreeing to. And the Hamilton CBD parking issue is a classic case of that. Fortunately, there are now increasing examples of groups of citizens getting together to challenge and stop some ill-informed and ill-considered council decisions in many parts of the country. Another recent example close to home is the appalling arrogance of council staff over the new bridge location in Cambridge. I'm saying this simply to indicate that in the spirit of Plato, I'll be watching very carefully what the WRC decides to do about your much-needed electoral reform. If it does award Hamilton an additional seat, then in my opinion, if it does not award Hamilton an additional seat, there will be grounds for challenging this. For in the end, it has been difficult not to regard all local body politicians as having a vested interest in electoral reform, as they are affected by it, and one would question if they should be doing the jobs themselves rather than an independent commission. I hope you can rise above that and deliver the changes that are needed. Ngā mihi nui kata katoa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Armitage. Much appreciated. Are there any points of clarification? Oh, Councillor Smith.
Thank you. A very interesting submission, and thank you for doing so. Can you tell me, and I'm not picking at you, I just want to understand your background in the analysis. So do you have some background in statistics or mathematics?
Yes. I worked for 30 years as an economist in Wellington, specialising particularly in fisheries, as one of the people that was the architect of the ITQ system.
That gives a bit more credibility, so that helps. Thank you.
So I left my hearing aids at home today and I can't quite hear you.
Mine. No, very helpful. Thank you.
Councillor Mahuta.
Kia ora, thank you for your submission. I just note I am the 5th constituent councillor in Hamilton, just if it wasn't clear. Kia ora.
Councillor Nicol.
Kia ora, Russell. A big thank you. The points you made at the very beginning are so important because this kind of discussion of the number of councillors always subject to, there's a bit of skin in the game from the councillors.
Yes.
So having that scrutiny from the outside is so important. I agree. Just to note, my understanding is that there's a limit in the Local Government Act as to the number of councillors. So that's something we'll be discussing later.
Yes, I advised of that yesterday,
Yeah.
but my view is, of course, that anything can be changed if there's the will. And I didn't know that Canterbury has 16.
Thank you for your submission.
It has been requested if we could get a copy of what you have read out to
Yes,
us.
of course.
That
Most
would be-
certainly.
That would be fantastic.
I could even email it. I can manage that.
That would be terrific. Very
Thank you.
good. If there's no further points of clarification for the submitter. Nope. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your energy and your obvious enthusiasm for engaging in this process. It is
Thank you very
so
much. No, it's-
important what you say. I think many of us are well aware of the low voter turnout.
Yeah.
And we've seen recent evidence of that in
And just look
in
at the poor
Tauranga.
UK on voter turnout.
So
Disaster. But
so
thank you very
I-
much for your tolerance and your time.
Absolutely.
I always enjoy this sort of situation. Thank you very much.
That's terrific.
You're doing a
Thank
good
you.
job. You are doing a good job.
Oh, kia ora. Thank you very much. All right, do we have? Yes.
Marley, a question. We didn't consult on 5 for Hamilton. And so therefore, what are the options?
Shall we, Molly, shall we cover that when we come to the deliberations? Can we just hold that question and because we do have another submitter who has joined online. But Councillor Smith, I'll get you to raise that when we move to the deliberation. Okay, so online we have Michael Cameron. Mr. Cameron, can you hear me? Oh,
I
sorry,
can,
is it
thank you.
Dr. Cameron, I'm told. Welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. So just so you're aware, Dr. Cameron, the counselors do have a copy of the submission. I understand you're speaking on behalf of Priya Kurian. I hope I'm saying that correctly.
That's great.
So we do have a copy of that submission, but you are welcome to speak to council on this matter.
So I think I will speak to the submission, even though you have a printed copy or a copy pre-circulated. So this is a submission on behalf of a number of experts from the University of Waikato. I'm Michael Cameron. I'm Professor of Economics here at Waikato. My background is in population health and development, and of relevance to this. I am one of the team that prepares population projections for the Waikato region that the Regional Council uses in its planning, and also the other partners in Future Proof, Hamilton, Waipa and Waikato District as well. This is a joint submission with Dr. Christina Hanna, Associate Professor Patrick Barrett, Emeritus Professor Jacques Pote and Professor Priya Kurian. Collectively, we are experts in urban planning and local government and political science, public policy, demography and population economics. So we come with a very broad set of expertise. We have some serious concerns about the proposal. The first concern has to do with the data that's being used. The proposal was based substantively on 2018 census data. There's a couple of serious issues with that. Firstly, we know that the 2018 census had a historically low response rate. Statistics New Zealand and many others have expressed serious concerns about the quality of data that came out of the 2018 census, particularly data at the small area level and data for population groups like Māori and Pacifica. And that should be really of relevance to a decision-making process like this, because it's a small area data that is being used to define boundaries. So secondly, and related to that, of course, we've had another census since then. So we've had the 2023 census. So the 2018 census is now very dated, and it's not even the most recent data that are available. The 2023 census data, the small area data that could be used for defining boundaries, is actually going to be available from October of this year. So it's not so far away. Secondly, the recommended practice processes for conducting representation reviews recommends local authorities consider whether there have been significant changes in population in some areas which impact on fair representation, that is approximate equality between councillors and the numbers represented. It's worth noting that the Waikato region is one of the fastest growing regions in the country, but it's not growing equally in all areas across the region. Hamilton City, Waipa and Waikato districts are growing significantly faster than the rest of the region. So using data for a decision like this that is based on the 2018 census that's now 6 years old has a very real risk of misrepresenting the population distribution across the region. In particular, it would seem to underrepresent Hamilton City, Waikato and Waipa relative to the rest of the region. Thirdly, the proposal seeks to adjust the Waiho general constituency over-representation by adjusting the boundary with Thames Coromandel. Again, the use of 2018 census data doesn't guarantee that that would be a satisfactory outcome relative to the population distribution that we would have observed from the 2023 census. Fourthly, population projections such as those that I prepare or that Infometrics prepares or that Stats New Zealand indeed prepares suggest that rural areas are growing slower, or in fact some areas are declining in population relative to urban areas, and that's very relevant to the Waikato region where Hamilton and the surrounding peri-urban area, again Waipa, Waikato district, are growing faster than the rest of the region. And lastly, we are aware of the time frame for conducting the review, but nevertheless, we still hold our concerns that the data that are being used, while they are the most recent data available at small areas, that is only by a matter of months from when the new data from the 2023 census would be available. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Cameron. I've got Councillor Smith.
Good morning, Michael. Nice to see you again. Have you got any suggestions, because I don't see in the paper that's been presented on behalf of the team from Waikato, our previous submitter, Mr. Armitage, was also an economist, and he suggested that on the figures that he's presented to us, which is, I think, in line with your own submission, is that Hamilton should have 5. Have you actually got any views on the numbers across the region?
We didn't go to the extent of actually working out what an optimal allocation would be. I mean, ultimately, that's your decision rather than ours. But the reason why we didn't is because that census data from 2023, that would be the best data to use, doesn't become available till October.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Clarkson.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Cameron. My question's in a similar vein. So the trajectory of the data over a good number of years, whether you use 2018 or 2023 or whatever year you use, is still telling the same fundamental underlying story. And in the council prepared document, there was an option for reduction of 1 seat in the Waiho constituency, and that could potentially be used to rectify this imbalance. And would that not be consistent with the underlying theme of all of the data components that you've been studying?
Yeah, I would say that there is a consistent theme with the data, and that is that the urban areas are growing in population, and the rural, more peripheral areas in the region are shrinking in relative terms, or growing less slowly is probably another way of putting it. And so there should be a rebalancing of the number of councillors towards the areas that have a larger share of the region's population. And by using the 2018 census data, we're not taking, or you wouldn't be taking into account the last 6 years of population growth, and therefore be at real risk of underrepresenting those areas that have been growing relative to those that have been growing slower or declining.
Thank you.
I'm reflecting on the comment, Councillor Mahuta, that you made with the previous submitter. Just wondering, Dr. Cameron, if you've got any, I don't know if you were online and listening to that previous submission, but it was, Councillor Mahuta was making the point that she is representative of the Māori rural constituents in Hamilton, so is in effect a 5th councillor for Hamilton. In your assessment, did you take that into consideration? Or Do you have any comments to that?
I don't have any specific comments in relation to that. I'm sorry.
All right. Are there any other points of clarification that councillors would like to ask of the submitter? If not, thank you very much. Oh, sorry, Councillor
Just
Nicol.
to say thank you. It's really helpful having your expertise and those of your colleagues on this topic come in because there's a lot of facets to it. Thank you. And
No,
Tipu.
thank you for taking the time to listen to us.
Oh, I do have a comment from Councillor Mahuta.
I want to echo the thanks, but ask of our process, Marley, with experts like this in our community, how can we get there with their input prior to or along the way, rather than us have to do all this. We got a centre for population studies.
Yeah.
Each time we lean in. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much, Dr. Cameron, for making yourself available to speak to the submission today. Much appreciated.
Kia ora, thank you, and I wish you all good luck with your deliberations.
Kia ora. All right. Do we have our third submitter online yet? Okay. Oh, sorry, Dave, there she is. Counselor just noting that we do have a third submitter who wished to be heard. So we're just going to, I think what we'll do is we'll adjourn. It is 10:19. We'll adjourn for a few minutes and try and contact that submitter so we can continue. So meeting adjourned. All right, councillors, I'll ask you to take your seats. Okay, we'll reconvene the meeting. It is 10:25. So councillors, we have our third submitter. Is it Gary? Gary Neva? And we've had some difficulty with the tech link and things like that. So what we've got is we've got her on the phone. We're going to hold it up to the mic and hopefully this works. Okay. Kia ora.
Kia ora, ko nira taku ingoa, ko I'm just wanting to speak to everyone there at the Waikato Regional Council with regards to all the people on the Coromandel Peninsula not getting a fair deal on where the resources are going. We have willows choking our hours here and nothing's being done about it. We have dredging that desperately needs to happen, especially at the end of Buffalo Beach, so that if a tsunami hit us, we wouldn't be all underwater. There's a lot of resources that aren't reaching the Coromandel Peninsula. And a lot of the resources is to do with consents and action being taken place where introduced species are being eradicated, especially along our rivers.
Sorry, I'm not sure if I need to speak into this mic. So she
Yes, I can hear you.
You can hear me. Good. Kia ora, it's Pamela Story here, Chair of the Waikato Regional Council. Just wanting to make sure we are staying on topic in regards to the representation review that we're discussing.
We are not being represented fairly on the Coromandel Peninsula.
And so are you referring in terms to the population that the councillors represent? Is that just want to make sure we understand what you mean?
Just in resources and in the fact that we've got a lot of rivers and ocean around us on the Coromandel Peninsula, and we don't have people actually doing anything to support our choking rivers and our shorelines, especially the areas that need to be dredged, like Brophy's Beach. In the past was always dredged and it's no longer being done. If a tsunami hit us, it would be very, very fatal for those residents along there.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Neva. I've got a question, or sorry, first of all, are you finished with your submission or is there?
I'd like to, you ask me some questions so I can answer to what you want me to say.
Certainly, I've got a question from Councillor Marr. So we'll take the phone over to Councillor Marr so that he can ask his question.
Yeah, good morning, Garrett. It's Warren Maher here, Councillor for the Thames Coromandel. Understand your concerns around the dredging and things like that. I know some dredging has been done by TCDC around Mother Brown's Creek. What we're more concerned about today, Garrett, is representation around boundaries for electoral purposes and also the number of councillors for those areas. So if you have any comments. This is something, if you read the brief that we put out on this. It's around population figures. Unfortunately, well, actually what's happened today is a number of submitters have commented that we're actually currently using 2018 population figures. We all know they're well out of date, so we'll be looking at what we can do and some more up-to-date figures, which will actually hopefully show just how much the Coromandel area has grown, which will then give us some substance to maybe look at another councillor. But that's a process that we'll be working through.
Yes, it's very outdated. 2024 is where we're currently at, and we just don't, the amount of money you guys are getting from us, we don't get that back in what needs to be done around here.
Yeah.
We've got more rivers and more shorelines that needs to be addressed that is being ignored.
Look, I agree with you there, and more than happy for you to email me through your concerns, and happy to come and have a bit of a chat and sit down meeting with you to help move this forward. So once again, thanks for your submission today.
All right, we have.
Well, I don't think I was very benefit at all, but it is not, we are not getting, we were promised, it was only going to be $50 for the Waikato rates, and now it's over $300. And we're just not getting what all of us are paying for back here on the Coromandel Peninsula.
Yeah, more than happy to listen to your concerns and come and have a cup of coffee with you and talk it through, Garrett.
Great.
So again, thanks for your submission. And you have had the ear of all the councillors around the table, believe me.
And we do have another question or point of clarification from Councillor Smith.
Councillor Smith here. Thanks for your comments. Just to give you some satisfaction you've been listened to. This morning, Councillor Cookson and I met with our General Manager of the Integrated Catchment, the rivers and streams and the likes, and asked him to look at the work that's come out of the East Coast Cyclone Gabriel report and look at the issues that were identified there with communities, rivers and the likes, to make sure that our infrastructure and protection and the work being done on river mouths, etc., is up to date. And he's indicated that work has already started. So we will be. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, okay. So could I? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, look, thank you very much for your comments, and we've taken them on board, and we'll get back to you. Thank you very much.
Great. All right. I'll let you, Dave, bring the, oh, okay. All right. It was on the fly. We were trying to find a way to overcome the technology.
I think we need to make sure people can
but
see her,
it's just so those who aren't in the chamber, just so you understand, Dave Doggart is just finishing off the phone call with the submitter, but we certainly heard, councillors certainly heard the sentiments that were expressed. So I appreciate the on-the-fly ability to overcome the technology challenges. Okay, Warren, can I just get you to hit that light on that one? So I don't have my democracy person in order to receive the, or can I just go ahead? I can just go ahead? Oh, here we go. All right. It's a whirlwind. Welcome back, everybody. Okay. All right. So, it is musical chairs. Okay. All right. Hey, well done, everybody, for accommodating as we worked through that. And I'm pleased that we were able to hear from all three submitters who wished to be heard. So thank you to them for engaging in the process. Thank you to them for showing up and participating and bearing with us as we worked our way through. All right, so we've got a motion to receive the report. That's moved by Councillor Hughes, seconded by Councillor Dunbar-Smith. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so now we go to item 7.5, which is the final representation arrangements proposal. This is on page 201 of your agenda packs. And we go back to Molly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have prepared about a dozen slides. I'll whiz through them. I just wanted to take the opportunity to walk you through some key information. Next slide, Dave. Just a bit of a reminder about why we're doing this. Council must review its representation arrangements every 6 years. And so with the last one conducted back in 2018, the current one is due. When reviewing representation arrangements, Council must consider and provide for fair and effective representation of community of interests. And therefore, there are three key considerations: communities of interest, effective representation, and fair representation. And just really quickly, with regard to communities of interest, while it is not defined in the Local Electoral Act, one definition describes it as a three-dimensional concept that includes perception or perceptual, a sense of belonging to an area, functional, which is all about access to services, and political, which is all about representation of interests. With regard to effective representation, this relates to the number of elected members. And so for regional councils, that range is between 6 and 14. Effective representation also includes considerations and factors like accessibility, size of constituencies, and the configuration of those constituencies. And then just lastly, fair representation requires that each elected member is represented or represents roughly the same number of residents. And that population ratio should not exceed the plus or minus 10% rule. Next slide, please, Dave. Just very quickly on our current representation arrangements, they have served Council and our communities well over the past decade. However, when we do apply the most recent electoral population statistics, they indicate that the Waiho General Constituency no longer complies with the fair representation rule. As you can see there, the variance is negative 13.05, which means that Waiho is currently overrepresented. So, Council, through the process of the review, explored a number of options for achieving a more balanced representation, and several scenarios were considered in a council workshop last year in December. Fast forward a number of months, and in April of this year, Council adopted its initial representation arrangements proposal for public consultation. I did mention earlier in the meeting during or as a prelude to the hearing of submissions that the initial proposal was publicly notified along with the submission process. The initial proposal seeks to maintain our current arrangements to the extent possible, recognising that current arrangements do represent communities of interest effectively, with the modification to the Waiho constituency boundary at the northeastern end to resolve the fair representation imbalance of that general constituency. Can we go to the next slide, please, Dave? So we have received 10 submissions in total on the initial proposal. This slide and also the papers provide a high-level summary of the submissions that were received. I'll just whiz over this really quickly. With regard to Māori constituencies, 3 submissions are in favour of maintaining 2 Māori constituencies, 3 oppose. 2 additional comments on Māori representation also presented differing views in support and opposition. I am coming to answer each of these points next. Moving to the number of elected members, 3 submissions endorse maintaining 14 elected members, our current situation, and 1 suggests reducing the number by 1. We also heard today from Mr. Armitage the suggestion to increase by 1. Waiho constituency boundary was another submission point coming through. 4 submissions support modifying the Waiho general constituency boundary, whereas 2 oppose it. There is also a number of submission points about the number of general constituencies. 2 submissions favour retaining 6. 1 suggests splitting the Waiho and King Country constituencies. Lastly, census data reliability and population projections. Some key points that were made today during the hearing of submissions. But just to summarise, 2 submissions highlight that there are flaws in the 2018 census data and suggest that the 2023 census data should be used to guide our decision making. And so just turning then to the response to the submission points, starting again with Māori representation. The decision to establish Māori representation can't be revisited through this particular process. That decision is made in advance of a representation review process, and this council considered Māori representation last year in August and reconfirmed its intention to maintain. What the representation review can consider in this respect is the number of constituencies, their boundaries and their names. But given that the number and nature of submissions received on this particular topic, the staff recommendation is that we maintain the current structure of 2 Māori constituencies. Moving on then to the number of councillors. First of all, thank you to Mr. Armitage. Still around? No, he's left. For the additional data that he has provided us and spoken to today. Just to address the data specifically, the data that has been used is residential population. And so if you have a look at table 2, the Hamilton, let's focus on the Hamilton data provided because he was specifically talking about Hamilton.
Sorry, you're speaking to the tables that Mr. Armitage provided.
Yes. So I just want to make a couple of clarifying comments about the data. It is residential population data used. And so for the Hamilton constituency specifically, it shows 185,000 residential population, which is correct. But the population that we rely on for this process is electoral population. And so for the Hamilton constituency specifically, that number is 157,400 for general electoral population, and this is the population in the Hamilton constituency. And then there are 27,900 Māori electoral population, and that population is in Ngā Hau e Whā.
Can I just get a,
So that includes both Hamilton and Waikato district, right? Just so we're clear.
Madam Chair?
Oh, sorry.
The figure that I've given you for the Māori electoral population is only the Māori electoral population within the Hamilton
Oh,
constituency.
within Hamilton.
There is an additional number for the Waikato, and I can give you that figure because I've got them at my fingertips.
Oh, I just wanted to make sure, because you referred to the constituency as a whole, which
Yeah.
includes both Hamilton and Waikato district area. So just wanted to make sure we were all clear
Ka pai.
what that number referred to.
Can I, Madam Chair, may I just clarify?
Yeah.
The figures you just quoted then, Marley, are they 2023? The 157 electoral, or is that 2018 electoral?
They are actually the 2024 figures based on 2018 census data.
They're a projection.
Yes, an
Thank you.
estimation.
Thank you.
Rightio.
Oh, it's very
It's-
difficult to get to our hands on data that feels timely and accurate, I suppose. Just my
Yeah.
feeling.
Chair, can I just,
Yes, Councillor
Yeah.
Strange.
you were about to tell us the updated population of Tipa's constituency in the Waikato
In the
area.
Waikato
We
district?
heard the Hamilton part, but I'm just really interested in how many people Tipa has to look after, just to give me a
Sure.
comparison. Thank you.
So for Hamilton, I'll just repeat the Hamilton numbers. Māori electoral population is 27,900, and in the Waikato district, Rohe, it is 15,950.
Chair,
Yes, Councillor Smith.
I just wonder whether it wouldn't be helpful if Marley could get something in writing. We could either have here or up on the board with the 2018 updated projections across 2024, across all the constituencies, and see if they come within the plus or minus 10%. That would be most helpful. And so I'd like to see that, please.
I do have some slides coming up with maps and numbers to talk to very shortly. Would that
Well, I'll wait
be
to see if
helpful?
that-
Or we'll
Yeah.
work our way through the presentation,
thank you.
and then if there's further questions, we'll take those then.
Need to see it across in front of us all at the same time. Thanks.
Okay, so still with the topic of the number of councillors, most submissions received do support maintaining the current 14 elected members. And I'll just re-emphasise that 14 is the maximum. We cannot have more than that number. However, there was one submitter that suggested that we reduce the number by one, so to 13 in total. And so it's just worth pointing out that a reduction in number will, of course, impact the configuration of our representation arrangements. I am going to represent some of these previous options, and one option does include an option for 13, but we will get to that.
Just a quick question. Mr. Armitage said there were 16 in Environment Canterbury, and that appears to be the case.
Yeah.
So the number of councillors for regional councillors isn't fixed at 14, or is it they're a special case?
Very
Special-
good question, and I
special
did mean to address that, so I'm so pleased that you raised it. It is a special case. So in Canterbury, there is a special piece of legislation called the Ngai Tahu Representation Legislation, and that legislation allows for 2 members appointed by Ngai Tahu. And so the council has 14 members. They've elected to have their 14 members, and the additional comes from Ngai Tahu. And they went through a bill process in order to have that arrangement. Good question. Alrighty, so now moving on to I still want to address the number of councillors because of submission points raised by both Mr. Armitage and the University of Waikato. Both of the submissions really emphasised the growth within the Hamilton area. And I just wanted to highlight that currently the Hamilton general constituency is within the fair representation rule. So it is within that plus or minus 10%. Through the initial phases of the review, there were some population projections presented to Council to help you in your considerations, and it was highlighted at that early stage that in years to come, it is likely that the Hamilton general constituency will no longer comply with the fair representation review. So it currently does, but in years to come, it's unlikely. And there were a number of options presented in order to, I guess, come up with a different representation arrangement that might be more acceptable, knowing that that is coming in the future. And we'll look at those shortly. Moving on to the Waiho constituency and also the number of constituencies, just with regard to the suggestion to split the Waiho general constituency and also the King Country constituency. Currently, you know that both constituencies have 2 elected members within those constituencies. If you were to split them in 2 and have one representing the newly formed constituencies, we would have to draw that line through the middle of district council areas. So for the King Country, it would be through the Waipa Council Rohe, and for Waiho, there would be a line somewhere through the Matamata Piako District Council Rohe. I also wanted to just note that Matamata Piako Council is submitted to the process, and they were supportive of the proposal to adjust the boundary at the north eastern end of the Waiho constituency. My assumption is they are happy that their entire area remains intact. And I am moving away from what we currently have as an initial proposal and what we have traditionally adopted for representation arrangements would mean moving away from boundaries that follow territorial authorities if we were to go with that suggestion.
So I've got Councillor Clarkson. Is it with regards to that particular point?
Exact point. So I think obviously the person who made that suggestion was Russell Armitage, the splitting of Waiho and King Country, and today he gave us a different story. He gave us I believe, an updated, revised view of what he was thinking. But we could have asked him the question, are you resiling from the splitting of these constituencies, but we didn't. So yeah, I think we just need to keep that in mind, that today he obviously had done a whole lot of statistical analysis, which was not in his original submission. And yeah, that's the point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Clarkson, go ahead, Molly.
The last submission point that I wanted to address relates to the timing of our final decision and census data reliability. Both the University of Waikato and also Mr. Armitage did suggest that basing our decision on 2023 data was essential. The university specifically suggests that we delay our decision. However, Council cannot delay a decision on its final representation arrangements. We have a statutory requirement to adopt a final decision no later than the 2nd of August. So today is the day. However, when Council adopted its initial proposal, it strongly emphasised similar view to those that have been raised in submissions regarding the census data and having to base our decision on 2018 data, and the preference that any significant change be made on the most recent 2023 census data. Therefore, Council has committed to revisiting representation arrangements sooner than the, I guess, statutory minimum, and to do so in the next round, which is 2027. Next slide, please, Dave. Really quickly, this is about our statutory process and timeframes. It includes the steps that we've already taken and steps that we are yet to take. Just really quickly before we dive into the options, I wanted to highlight that following a council resolution on the final proposal, public notice is required. The public notice must state reasons for any amendment to our initial proposal and the reasons for rejecting any of the submission points. Then there is a 1-month appeal or objection period. Any person or organisation who has submitted on our initial proposal may lodge an appeal against the final proposal, and any appeals received, any appeals lodged must identify the matters to which the appeal relates, and so they can only raise issues that have already been raised in their submissions to date. In addition, a right of objection by anybody exists if council adopts a final proposal that is different to the initial proposal. So I thought that was just worth highlighting before we have a look at the options. So let's get into the options.
Oh, I see your light. Councillor Mahuta, did you have a question or point of clarification on?
I just
the current
wondered, I know that's the 6-yearly 27 thing, but should the analysis post-census data, what can we do to bring that forward, I guess? Do we have to wait to 2017? Once it's evidenced, at the moment we're guesstimating, 2027, but once we have data, what can we do as council to proactively, I guess, move that into? Otherwise, by the time 2027 rolls around, we're then dealing with another historic census outcome. So just wondering.
It's a really good question, and there's a number of councillors that have asked it over the last number of months. The 2027 date is tied to the electoral cycle. It's a statutory timeframe, and so the ability to review our representation arrangements sooner is not possible. The soonest we can do that is in 2027.
Can I ask a question too?
Sure.
If you could just remind me, I think it was in the previous papers, if we were to get an appeal, then it automatically goes to the local government commission, doesn't it? We pass that on out of our hands anyway. All right, thank you.
Sure. Go ahead,
Just
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
So in terms of the numbers that we were working on when we did the analysis, your page 203, where by house 64 with 2, so we were doing the shift to make things up to date. You note there that although people have been talking about 2018 census, you've actually done an estimated resident population as of 30th of June 2023. So you've done estimates forward, projections, so that we're not locked back in 2018, we've moved forward to make these adjustments.
That's right. The data is updated on an annual basis. WRC staff don't undertake that process of estimation. Stats New Zealand do. And so this information comes directly from them. And it's probably worth noting as well that all of the options that have been presented today and previously, that the population data used is given by Stats New Zealand. It is not WRC staff trying to work that out.
All right.
Next slide, please, Dave. Revisiting the options. All of these options are included in the papers and have been considered previously through the process and are now represented for further consideration. So the first option A is the initial proposal for both the general and Māori constituencies adopted as the initial proposal. So you know what this option is. You're very familiar with it. It is close to status quo because it maintains most of the constituencies as is. However, there is a modification to the Waiho constituency, and this modification is considered an improvement for a number of reasons. One, it now complies with the fair representation rule, and it also enhances the representation related to Hauraki District Council because it increases the area within the Waiho constituency, and it also improves or enhances representation of those people within the Waiho catchment area. So it's very catchment focused. With regard to Māori constituencies, it is the status quo, 2 elected from 2 constituencies. Next option, actually, before I move on to option B, this option is subject to appeal only. It complies with the fair representation rule, so it doesn't automatically go to the Local Government Commission. And if this became the final proposal, it will therefore not be open to objection to everybody else. Does that make sense? Cool.
Just to clarify that only the people who've submitted today can make an appeal.
Yes.
Thank you.
Option B presented is about the status quo. So we're all very familiar with the status quo. If this was the option to go for today, and I have heard suggestions that we don't make any decision, we wait, but I guess this is the closest option to that, remaining with the status quo until we get further data or the 2023 census data to make any decisions about change. So if that was, I guess, a reasonable decision that council, or reasonable reason for council not to make any changes, this would be what you would go with. However, it would automatically be referred to the Local Government Commission because it's non-compliant with the plus or minus 10% rule. It's subject to appeal, and it's also subject to objection. Next option. Option C is an option that was mapped but didn't make any previous council papers. It is seeking to modify the Waiho general constituency to address the current non-compliance with fair representation rule, but it follows the Hauraki Plains ward. That's where the modification boundary is. So the Hauraki Plains ward is one of the wards in the Hauraki District Council. The legislation does encourage, or actually what it says is something along the lines of boundaries should coincide with territorial authority boundaries and or wards where practicable. And so this option here is most aligned, I guess, with that particular clause in the Local Electoral Act. However, it doesn't completely resolve the non-compliance with the plus or minus 10% rule. And therefore, it will be referred directly to the Local Government Commission. It is subject to appeal, and it is subject to objection. Next option, there's a number more, so I'll just whiz through the following ones. The rest of the options presented are more substantial in terms of the change proposed. This first one is 5 general constituencies with 12 elected members, so maintaining 14 elected members in total. This option combines both the Thames Coromandel constituency with the Waiho general constituency. This would be subject to appeal and subject to objection, but it does comply with the fair representation rule. Next option, please, Dave. Looking now at a reconfiguration with 3 general constituencies, 12 members, maintaining 14 in total. As you can see, this proposes larger constituencies, 1 in the northeast, 1 southern, and 1 northwest, combining constituencies, territorial authorities to create larger constituencies. This was mapped up as a potential way to address the growth in Hamilton. Moving to the next option. Again, this one is 3 general constituencies, but proposes 1 less elected member. So 11 members from the general constituencies, which brings our total number of elected members to 13 in total. Again, the constituencies are combined, they are larger, and a number of territorial authorities are also combined within these arrangements. Next option, thanks, Dave. And I believe this is one of the very last ones. This is the most extensive change option presented, and it's looking at 3 general constituencies with 8 general elected members, which means if you put that number alongside the 2 Māori members, 10 in total. Subject to appeal, subject to objection.
Sorry, so I've got, Councillor Mar, are you still willing to wait? Councillor Hughes, or do you have a question in particular around this, or are you willing to wait?
I don't mind either or.
Okay, so Councillor Kneebone, is your question specifically in relation to this option? Okay, go ahead and ask the question.
Thanks. So Marley, sorry, this one and the previous, these ones that have these big 2 or 3 constituencies, I can't see the detail, but I'm assuming from looking at it, they've got some of the high population areas such as Waipa and that sort of thing in them. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So they're at risk of the high population densities having all the voting grunt, at the risk of some of those outlying areas on the fringes missing out. It's probably quite high.
Last slide, please, Dave. The last option is all about the Māori constituency option, and this option is about reconfiguring so that there is 1 Māori constituency with 2 members elected from the 1. Subject to appeal, subject to objection. Next slide. I might pause there because I'm on to the recommendations. Any questions?
Are you wanting to speak to
Yeah,
before we go to the
options are
recommendations?
presented, yeah, I'd like to speak.
Yes.
Overall. Thank you, Madam
Councillor
Chair.
Mar.
Look, thank you, Marley, and thank you for all the work that's gone into the background of this. What I'd like council to consider is that option B, the status quo, noting that it will have to go to local government committee, but we tick the box for communities of interest. We already took that box pretty much across all of them. So my concerns are that, and as I mentioned in our first round of this, that we're using those old figures, the 2018 census figures. We've heard from 2 in my opinion, expert submitters today, their concerns around that. So the process of it going to local government committee doesn't concern me as such. They're going to look at it because I reckon we have sound reasoning for our decision to sit at this stage as status quo, and let's wait to see what falls out. I understand there's been projections done and that sort of thing, but we still don't have hard and fast electoral numbers. And that's so I'd really like the councillors to actually consider that status quo as it sits now, rather than just messing around with a couple of boundaries that we may find by the end of October haven't really done the job anyway. We're talking about 2,000 odd people. Half of those are probably kids because it's population based. You know, I would really like us to see status quo. Thank you.
Just a question. If we chose an option that then automatically went to the local government commission, would they be in a position to consider the 2023 census data? Would the timing align so that they could consider that more recent census data?
Potentially, because we are expecting that data to be available in October. And the Commission's decision on the representation reviews across the country are due no later than April. So it is kind of within a period of time where that data is expected to be available. So if that data is available when they are making their decision, I'm confident they would look at that data to help inform their decision making.
So if it goes to the local government commission, could they potentially come back with any of those options that you have put in front of us? So could be a considerable change across the region. It wouldn't just be a minor tweak here or there. Have I got that right? I don't know. I'm just looking.
It could be a minor tweak. It could be more substantial. It could be one of the options we have considered. It could be something totally different.
Okay, just want to make sure we're all understanding of where that can lead to. All right, I've got Councillor Hughes, Councillor Clarkson, Councillor Smith. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Marley, can you, and you've probably explained it, but what I'm thinking at the moment, we've had submissions from people, as our chairs explained, who are learned and experienced in this analysis. What if we encourage one of them to appeal? How long can we delay the process, the decision-making process? And what I'm seeking is the ability to be able to access that 2023 census data. And if we manage to push it out into, say, middle of October, will that then endure for future reviews? Or are we going to be reset back to the timetable we're sitting at the moment, having to make a decision by the end of July? Because it seems to me that this census issue is going to be ongoing unless they change the process, and we're going to be facing the same thing again in another 3 years or 6 years. So I guess I'm just trying to short circuit this and make it more user friendly for council this time around and also for the future.
If any of the submitters were to lodge an appeal, there will be another round of decision making, but the decision making will be taken out of council's hands and it will become the decision of the local government commission.
Sorry, can I just get a clarification and going back to that previous clarification I had, just based on that. So if we went ahead with the proposal that we consulted on, and that was appealed, and it goes to the local government commission, are we once again back to a situation where it could be any of these? Or do they look at that specific proposal and go, here's the minor tweak that we think would address a situation?
It's a really good question, because I understand that in the past the belief from councils has been that the local government commission would focus in specifically on the appeal points, but that is not the case. The local government commission can look at every aspect. Yep. They're not limited to just what has been raised in submissions. However, I just want to give council the confidence that whatever decision that you make today, if there is reasoned and reasonable, I guess, reasons for that decision making clearly articulated, then the Local Government Commission take that all on board. So just to give you confidence that whatever decision you go, whatever option you go with, let's just make sure that there are clear reasons setting out the why.
I suppose just a concern I have is we have gone out, consulted with our community on a specific proposal. My concern is if all of a sudden this goes to the Local Government Commission and our community is then faced with a proposal that has no similarity to what they have previously seen, what we consulted on, and it feels like a little bit of a blind side. Just so I'm clear, if the Local Government Commission came back with something that was quite different, is there another process that communities get involved in or can have a say or submit or anything like that? Or is it fait accompli?
When the Local Government Commission go through the process of decision making, council will have the opportunity to participate in that, much like a submitter.
Right. But do members of the public?
Those that lodge an appeal and or objection are also included in that process.
Their decision is final.
I've got Councillor Clarkson, Smith, and Mahuta. Councillor Clarkson.
Yeah, I mean, the key point that I wanted resolved was just resolved by Marley right then, because I think I'm with Warren and Chris and the elements of what they're saying. I do believe there will be an appeal. I think without doubt one of those groups is going to appeal. Seems pretty obvious, doesn't it, from their submission. I think that also because of the remit we are taking to Local Government New Zealand in August, we're going to put a spotlight on this issue and we're going to actually cause them potentially to really rethink the way lack of synchronicity between the census process and what we're being forced to do. That's why I support what Warren's saying. And yes, okay, there are some risks with the Commission, but actually there is still an opportunity for us to make a submission to them if they come back with some silly proposal. I just can't go past the fact that we know what the underlying trends are. And what we're doing is tinkering around the edge of a boundary instead of addressing the fundamental issue, which is the change in numbers and density of population across our region. And yes, Marley is correct also when she referred to Russell's analysis being based on resident data, not electoral roll data. But I believe the two are quite closely correlated. So the point I would make is, yeah, I think we should just let it lie, not do the boundary tweak and cause the Commission to become involved. And in any case, if we didn't do that, I believe we'll be facing an appeal. We are caught. We're the ones that are caught between a rock and a hard place. It's not our problem. It's a problem of the way the legislation is framed and the lack of understanding of the need for current data. And the lag till 2027 is just perpetuating essentially a major anomaly. And I think Russell particularly covered that point off about what the electorate thinks about this. We're just not with it, basically. So look, thanks for that opportunity. And look, Marley too, thank you for all of your work. I know you've put a huge amount of effort into this and all of those options, but I think we're just caught between a rock and a hard place.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. As you know, I've spoken of this before. I've been in a council which has had two appeals on representation review, and in both occasions, the decision was taken out of the council's hand, and the Local Government Commission had much different views on the likes of communities of interest, which was a big focus for them. I've got to come back to the issues that face us, and it's not about communities of interest. It's about population here and the inability for us to get more accurate information. I know in the district, Waikato district, we relied heavily on the Waikato University projections, not on the data that was so old through the census. So I'm concerned about passing it to the Commission because my experience was that nobody actually ended up with exactly what they wanted, submitters or the council. It was the Commission's view in the end. But lifting it back to the region here, we're talking about a small area in the northeast of the Waihau constituency or the southwest of the Thames. I believe it's incumbent on this council to do what it's been asked through legislation and to actually make a decision and articulate, as Marley has alluded to, the reasons for that decision and the considerations, etc., that we've taken into view. To not do so and to just basically select an option that automatically throws it to the Commission comes back to the old saying is be careful what you ask for. When you throw your complete decision making into the body of a third party, which is made up of individuals not connected with the Waikato, you are likely to end up with something that you don't want. And a lot of people, not just those 4 parties that have objected, or sorry, submitted, or 10 that have submitted. So I think I would like to say, well, I want to see this council make a decision, and whether it's option 1 that we went out with or option 2. But if you deliberately seek the involvement of the Commission, you have no control over the result, and it can be completely and utterly different. I think the term is de novo. They start again and they work it out from scratch.
Yep.
So the big question here is, do you want to take responsibility for not doing what we've been asked and required through legislation, or are you asking for a third party to take control of the decision making that will make a huge difference to our community and who they have served as councillors for that area? So I would prefer that we did support the proposal, that we acknowledge that it is based on data that is out of date, noting our preference to do a complete and utter review. Again, the issues about the matters that Bruce has alluded to with the population statistics out of date. So I just through experience am concerned that if you openly invite the Commission, we will not end up with what we want or what our community, I'm more concerned about what our community wants. So I'll leave it at that, but at this stage, I will support the proposal with an absolute, it is incumbent that we have the analysis, the justification, rationale absolutely spelled out. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Mahuta.
Thank you, Marley. Thank you for the report and the analysis and the work. And just noting that we don't design this time frame as Bruce outlined. And at each juncture, since I've been a councillor, we've done this my 3rd review. It's been with best information at hand, but I do note that each time Waikato University's population studies have offered their view, so that's been very helpful. Just wanted to give background to the Māori constituencies for those members who are new to the table. When the constituencies were established, the current demarcation was endorsed by iwi. I just note that in case people don't know, and would consider that they would want a view on whether this at large or a change to the Māori boundaries, and we should afford them that because we're in partnership with so many of them. Not to say that's the only view we should take on board before 2017, but they should say whether or not the current constituency scenario suits them, because we did ask them, a decade ago. Okay, tērā. In practice of council, it was only last term, I think more last term than the terms prior to, where we fell off the constituent councillor lists when people talked. Lower Waikato, they only just talked about Pamela and not talking about these members, but they talked about the general constituency members. They didn't treat Kataraina and I as constituents of those same areas as you. So just to the previous submitter, perhaps that's information, because I do get invited to things, I do attend things in Hamilton, but in terms of how we talk at council, when you talk constituencies, you talk about yourselves. You don't tend to include Kataraina and I. although we attend to the work as well. So that's just by way of council. In terms of the proposal, like my learned colleague, I've seen the local government commission do the exact opposite of what councils want, especially when it was regards to Māori wards. I understand through Te Maruata, the LGNZ Committee of Māori, because Benita Bingham is a member of that they already have a queue, given the representation reviews that are being from around the motu, they're already considering 4. Given that every other council has to go there next year, there will be in a queue of people sorting this out. So today we get to decide to make a brave decision and be corrected in 2027, or make no decision and be corrected anyway whenever the commission gets to our proposal. So I'd rather be brave, work on the guesstimation, and figure it out in 2027 with we'll support you to do that, Marley, because it's going to be messy next year. If they've already got 4 in review, then we're just going to add to the backlog. That's my worry, that we won't get clarity and next minute we're in 2027 doing it again anyway. Hey, Kei reira. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Mahuta. Councillor Nicol and then Councillor Dunbar-Smith. Councillor Nicol.
Thank you. I think Councillor Clarkson said a lot of the things I was originally going to say, and I've jumped around quite a bit trying to consider it all. And thanks for your comments, Tipper. In the specific situation in regards to the Māori wards, that was a question I had. I am thinking that the likelihood is there'll be an appeal. The likelihood is it could go into the queue no matter what decision we make. I have given a lot of thought even to the wider other changes since. I can see, even just from the Future Proof report that was in this agenda, there are some other communities of interest, say, surrounding Hamilton, that have a lot more in common with each other than, say, Cambridge has with Moko, for example. So a lot of the time in spatial planning, there is a radiating out from a city to identify communities of interest, I think. I might be wrong. So there's a multitude of options that can be done. However, I am a supporter of what the chair said previously of, obviously communities need a gradual change in things and not being told what to do from above without a chance to talk. So I'm really keen to understand the difference, Marley, between A and B. One is this council choosing to make a decision to go straight to the Local Government Commission, and then the appeal versus asking somebody else to do, well, not asking, but taking the risk that somebody else will do that appeal and then it going there anyway. You mentioned before about who would the Local Government Commission would be open to hearing from, and I'm assuming a hearings process. With option A, you said it was generally the person who made the appeal group as well as the regional council. Is that the same if we were to choose a non-compliant option as in option B? Will we send it there directly without an appellant as part of the process? Or is it then just us? Or does it open it up entirely to any member of the public for their hearing?
It is dependent, in terms of the parties involved in that next decision-making process, it is dependent on whether appeals or objections are received. And so appellants and objectors are involved in the next stage of decision-making.
Objectors to us, which would then become part of their process.
That's right.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies that. And obviously that then opens it up way more to anyone to have an opinion, which on one hand, people could see as a positive. However, I hear what you're saying, Councillor Smith. I don't wish to be part of a decision that is a non-decision, if you know what I mean, and that is a decision that is non-compliant. I don't think that's what we're put here to do, to make decisions that are non-compliant. Yeah, that's and so option A seems to be the most compliant option. That then obviously still leaves things open. So that's where I've gotten to. Thank you for that answer before.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Yeah, I'd like to support what Councillor Smith has said. I think we need to move forward with a decision. And I think we can argue that although it might be based on 2018 census, it has been updated to June 2023. It's not like we're stuck back in the past. We've acknowledged that. Furthermore, we can also acknowledge that we've taken this to Local Government New Zealand. We're being held by legislation to make a decision. You know, it's not our fault. There's nobody here willingly missing the deadline by 3 months. It's actually something that we can address through Local Government New Zealand. And I think if we told those points to the people who've made submissions, you know, made detailed replies to them. For example, I mean, Mr. Armitage, that his figures are not correct because he's not followed the process we have of general versus Maori. That might alleviate some of that. Again, the universities acknowledged that they know that we have to make a decision by the 2nd of August, which is rather unfortunate that they're holding our feet to the fire. Well, we can argue that we're taking it to Local Government New Zealand to take up as a national level. It's not our particular issue. So I just wanted to support Councillor Smith.
Councillor Smith.
Madam Chair, to move this forward, I would like to move the recommendation is on page 201. And I noted item 4 there, the public notice includes, among other details, the rationale behind the reasons for rejecting submissions. I think rejecting is a bit harsh. In the reality, it's why we've done it rather than rejecting, because I think the submitter, Mr. Armitage, and the university both spoke of the population issues, and whilst we're not rejecting what they're saying, I think we need to acknowledge what they're saying and acknowledge that we're doing the best with the figures we have and intend to do so. I think we need to include that, but it doesn't need to be in the wording, but I just would ask that that be included. So I'll move the recommendation as set out on page 201.
All right, we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate the commitment to listening to the submitters, the commitment to understanding the material that's been put before us. I appreciate, Molly, the effort that you and your team have put into providing a variety of options and also ensuring that counselors were fully aware of the results or the ramifications that might come from the consideration of the different proposals. So I really appreciate everybody's efforts in addressing this.
And just a request, I think I would like to see the final work and that goes off to the commission circulated to councillors before it goes. What goes down with the rationale, everything else, so that we can
wording of the public notice, I think, is what are, yeah. Great. Thank you very much, councillors. Much appreciated. All right, we now move on to, sorry, does everybody want 5 minutes? Do we want 5 minutes? Okay, so we will adjourn the meeting. It is 11:34. We'll come back in 5 minutes. Thanks, councillors.